Hello everyone, and welcome to another review. Today we're going to go ahead and review a fragrance from the house of Mont Blanc. The fragrance is known none other than Legend by Mont Blanc. Now, I did the review and did all my information off a bunch of the samples, so obviously don't have the bottle, so I'm going to go ahead and show you what the bottle and presentation actually looks like. So there really isn't much to actually scream about it. It's a dark bottle, fragrance bottle. There really isn't any really notable features to it. It's okay, it's not bad, nothing really much to scream at. It's available in three main sizes. It's available in 1.7, 3.4 ounces, and 5 ounces. 1.7 is going to run you about $52. The 3.4, $72 retail, and the 5 ounce is going to run you $95 retail. Those are all retail prices. The fragrance has been out since 2011, so you can find the prices or the fragrance for much cheaper if you especially look around. Discount sites have it for much cheaper all around. It's just a cheaper fragrance all around, right? So with that, let's go ahead and dive right into the notes of this fragrance. The notes of this fragrance consist of, at our top, we've got lavender, bergamot, lemon verbena, and pineapple. At our mid, we have coumarin, oak moss, geranium, rose, red apple, and dried fruit. At our base, we've got sandalwood and tonka bean. So when I sprayed this fragrance and tried it out for the very first time, I was actually pleasantly surprised. And I got I guess you could say, a sweet pineapple / apple type of a vibe to it. Immediately, I was greeted with a bit of a lavender and some geranium, actually, that would come right up, and a smell that kind of reminded me of dried fruits, which is in this fragrance as well too. So that would kind of come out, and it would be just outstanding on the top. As it begins to dry down, you begin to get a little bit more of I guess you could say, an aqua type of a smell. It starts to smell a little less fruity and a little bit more aqua fruity, if you will. And it begins to take, I guess you could say, on a vibe that is very similar to a lot of fresh fragrances that you have out there. And that really is the sort of vibe that you kind of get coming through the actual fragrance. This aquatic, kind of subdued, citrus type of a fragrance that you're going to really get from it. Now, for those of you who have smelled, this really does smell like Abercrombie & Fitch Fierce, whereas Fierce, on the other hand, is a little bit more aggressive out and takes a little bit different of a direction, especially at the top, for example. I think Fierce is a little bit more aggressive, and throughout the fragrance, Fierce dries down to a little bit more of a woody composure type, smell to it. That said, this fragrance, it's not as loud as Abercrombie & Fitch Fierce, and it's not a loud fragrance to begin with. It's one that sits a little bit closer to the skin. It does project about average, but it sits a little bit closer to the skin. Now, it dries down to a sweet musk. Now, a sweet, like a little bit of a woody-ish type of a musk that really retains the fragrance. Now, this is where the fragrance, in my opinion, makes a turn for it that I actually don't like. I said earlier that I really do like the top and the opening of the fragrance, and I really do. But once it's on your skin for a while, it begins to resemble what I call a generic fragrance. By generic, what I mean is it's the type of smell that that I've at least smelled countless times everywhere. It seems like a lot of fragrances, especially citrus ones like this one, that start off, nice and sharp, nice and pronounced, turn into this just fruity, dried down, woody smell. That it's a generic smell that I've smelled time and time again, and that's what this actually turns into. I don't want to say it's a bad smell, because it's not a bad smell, but on my skin, the smell comes off a little weird. It smells a little, I don't want to say dated, but it smells a little, what is the word that I'm looking for? It smells a little, I don't want to say, not musky. Musky's not the word that I'm looking for. Rancid. There we go. It smells a little rancid on my skin. And that is kind of what I get from generic fragrances, from either fragrances that are like Axe or something like that, or fragrances that are drugstore fragrances that are really cheap and they're just, spritzed and they're gone, and all of a sudden, they're just some weird kind of smelling, citrusy type of a vibe. And that's what I really get from this fragrance, which is disappointing. I'd heard good things about the fragrance, but I really gotta say, the top is great, but for the first maybe 20-30 minutes it's great, and then after that it turns into just this generic everyday fragrance that I really am not a fan of. Spray wise, I went about 3 to 5 sprays for this fragrance. You don't want to overdo it just because you can become that cologne guy with this fragrance. You don't want to really turn into that. It's a good fragrance for being, for the work situation, for casual situations. I wouldn't wear it out on a date just because it's really just generic. It's really generic, basically. Sorry about the interruption. It actually missed a good chunk of information just because I saw my camera slow down and figured, oh crap, something's going on. Lost it. But either way, let's dive right back into the review. For the season-wise, I think this is a great fragrance for the spring. It's a great fragrance for the summer. But outside of that, it doesn't really have the staying power to compete in the fall and the winter. Age group-wise, I think this is a great fragrance for high schoolers. I don't think it's a great fragrance for anyone else that is older. It's a fragrance basically just to have on. You'll smell nice, but it's really, nothing of note after that. And for the performance, it's got average projection, average sillage, and it will last anywhere between 4 and 8 hours on your skin. Now, as with all fragrances that I try, I take them out to Times Square. I have 100 different people smell them. Of 100 people who smelled them, there were 66 people who liked it. They thought that it was clean, fresh, and masculine. There were 20 people who disliked it. They said that it was cologne-y, boring, and weird. And there were 14 people who were in the neutral boat. So if I'm going to go ahead and give this fragrance a rating, I give this fragrance a rating of 4 out of 10. I give it a 4 out of 10 for a couple reasons. One, yes, the top is nice, and it is a decent smelling fragrance. But what it turns into is I gotta say, like a weird smelling, ultimately generic type of a fragrance. In other words, you can pretty much pick up a rock, toss it into the sea of fragrances, and get a fragrance that smells just like it, and is probably better performing than it. There are tons of fragrances that I can think of off the top of my head that are citruses that fit this same bill, that are just better fragrances all around than this fragrance, and I would easily recommend over this. There is almost no scenario where I can actually see myself recommending this fragrance to people to buy as opposed to some others. I would recommend, even though it drives me insane just because of how much they spray around the stores, Abercrombie & Fitch Fierce over this one, just because I feel that it's still a better fragrance than this one is. There's something that's just a little bit off with Mont Blanc Legend, and it's the best way that I can describe it is that. It's just this generic, almost like rancid type of a smell that remains on the skin. It really, doesn't really jump out at me. It's true, it's not expensive, so feel free to blind buy it if you want. I just feel that there's way better citrus fragrances fit the same bill that you can get for your same money, basically. All right. So if you disagree with me, feel free. Leave a message down below. Let us know what your thoughts are on this particular fragrance. Thank you, and have a great day.